with the big Ridley Scott movie hitting screens, there's one name from the history books that's suddenly everywhere again: Napoleon Bonaparte. He was this larger-than-life general who completely redrew the map of Europe. But here's the crazy part. More than 200 years after he died, we still can't agree on who he really was.
So what's the deal? Was this guy a hero, a liberator who brought new ideas to the people? Or was he a power-hungry tyrant who just left a trail of chaos and destruction in his wake? To even begin to answer that, we've got to look at both sides of the story.
Because on the one hand, you have this image of him as the celebrated hero, the guy who smashed the old, dusty monarchies. But on the other hand, he's painted as this ruthless conqueror whose endless ambition led to the deaths of literally millions. It's a huge contradiction, and to get it, we really have to go back to the very beginning. Now, here's something a lot of people don't realize. Napoleon wasn't really, well, French. Not at first, anyway. His story starts on the island of Corsica. And his journey from being this resentful kid on the outside to becoming the most powerful man in France is just an incredible story of ambition meeting opportunity. So, he's born on Corsica, right after it becomes French territory, and when he gets shipped off to a French military college, he's a total outsider. The other kids make fun of his accent, his background, so he basically just buries himself in books. He's reading about all the greats, Caesar, Rousseau, and just dreaming. But then, boom, the French Revolution happens. Everything is chaos, and in that chaos, there's a huge power vacuum. This is his chance. At a key battle, the Siege of Toulon, he shows everyone he's a military genius, and just like that, at only 24 years old, he's made a brigadier general. His rise was absolutely meteoric. But here's the thing, and this is so important to understanding Napoleon. His genius wasn't just about winning battles. Oh no. He was one of history's first and greatest masters of propaganda. He knew how to craft his own image, how to build a legend. He understood that what people believe is often more powerful than what's actually true. A perfect example, his campaign in Egypt. Militarily speaking, it was a total disaster. The British Navy completely smashed his fleet, and he ended up having to abandon his entire army just to sneak back to France. But back home, he was treated like a conquering hero. Why? Because he controlled the story. The newspapers he ran told tales of glory and discovery. It was a complete PR victory snatched from the jaws of a military defeat. And this right here just says it all. Look at this. On the left, you have the propaganda. Napoleon, looking like a Greek god on this magnificent, powerful horse, charging over the Alps. Pure power, pure destiny. And then, the reality. He actually made the trip on a plain old mule, led by a local guide. You see, this wasn't just a painting, this was a calculated move to build his brand, to create the myth of Napoleon. And you know what? It worked. So he's built this heroic reputation, this carefully crafted myth. What's next? He sets his sights on the biggest prize of all, total political power. This was no longer just about winning battles, this was about ruling France itself. So in 1799, France is a mess, and he sees his opening. He doesn't bother with elections, he doesn't wait for an invitation, he just rolls into Paris with his army, stages a coup d'etat, which is just a fancy way of saying he overthrew the government, and takes power. He gives himself the title First Consul, which sounds nice, but really it just made him the dictator of France. So how do you make a military takeover look legit? You hold a vote, right? Or, you pretend to. Just look at these numbers. I mean, come on. An official yes vote of 99.9%, 99.7%? It's just ridiculous. Historians are pretty clear that these so-called referendums were completely rigged. They were pure political theater, designed to give the illusion of democracy while he grabbed more and more power for himself. And Napoleon himself, well, he wasn't exactly shy about it. He once said, "Power is my mistress." He saw it as something to be conquered, something to be possessed. He didn't see it as a duty to the people. He saw it as his personal prize. And that's really the key to his rise. It was built on a foundation of military force and brilliant, but totally deceptive public relations. Okay, so now he has absolute power. The big question is, what did he do with it? And this right here is where that hero versus villain debate gets really, really messy. Because as a ruler, Napoleon was basically a walking contradiction. I mean, just look at this list. On the hero side, the guy was an unbelievable reformer. His Napoleonic Code, a unified legal system, is still the basis for law in tons of countries today. He modernized the economy, pushed for education, religious freedom, ended feudalism. These were huge, forward-thinking changes. But then, you look at the villain side. He brought back slavery in the colonies, a terrible, horrific step backward. He took away rights for women that they'd only just gained. He shut down newspapers that didn't agree with him, and basically put his brothers on the thrones of countries he conquered. It's like we're talking about two completely different people. And people at the time saw this change happening. Take the composer Beethoven. He was a huge fan at first. He saw Napoleon as a hero of the revolution, and even dedicated his incredible Third Symphony, the Eroica, to him. But then the news came that Napoleon had crowned himself emperor. Beethoven reportedly flew into a rage, yelling that Napoleon was just another tyrant after all, and he scrubbed his name off the dedication so hard he tore a hole in the paper. It's the perfect story of how the dream of Napoleon the Liberator died. In the end, it was that same bottomless ambition that fueled his rise that would also cause his spectacular fall. The empire he built was just too big, too dependent on conquest, and it eventually collapsed under its own weight. It really all started to unravel with his catastrophic decision to invade Russia in 1812. His legendary Grand Army was practically wiped out by the brutal Russian winter. After that, the dominoes fell fast. A coalition of enemies defeated him, and he was forced into exile on the island of Elba. Of course, he made one last, incredible comeback, the 100 Days, before his final, ultimate defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. He lived out his last few years on a lonely, remote island in the middle of nowhere, dying in 1821. So, after all that, we're back where we started. Hero? Villain? The truth is, he was both. He was a modernizer who dragged Europe into a new era, and he was a dictator who brought back slavery. He spread revolutionary ideas of liberty, and he did it through wars that killed millions. So maybe trying to stake one simple label on him just doesn't work. Maybe the best way to see him is as a complicated, contradictory force of nature, a man whose incredible talents were matched only by his incredible ambition, all forged in the fire of a revolutionary age.